You're going to get done.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to start.
All right.
Matt, would you go ahead, please?
You got to give them a notice. It takes them a minute.
Yeah.
We're live.
Yep. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 30th meeting of the Education Committee. I'd like to start tonight by going around the table. If we could each introduce ourselves.
Denise Brooks, School Board.
Mary Ann McKee, School Board.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board.
Mike Thorwald, School Board.
Matt Federickson, IT Director.
Susan Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
Andy Sanko, Director of K-12 Education.
Thank you, and welcome to members of the public who are joining us tonight. I believe we will also be joined by some other board members as the meeting transpires. We'll be sure to announce they're joining us. Tonight's meeting has a number of agenda items, and how I'd like to proceed is for Dr. Elliott to go ahead and present each of those, or Dr. Sanko, to present each of the items on the agenda, and if we could then pause after each agenda item and see if there are any questions or comments from the board. When we conclude the agenda, there'll be more opportunity for, again, discussion and questions from the board. And for members of the public, again, I welcome you. But as this is a working committee meeting, I would like to first give deference to my board colleagues and allow us to do our business, transact that business, and then open it up for your comments. I certainly want to give opportunity for everyone who wishes to speak to do so. If there are questions that can be answered tonight, we'll do our best to do that. But generally speaking, it will be public comment, not so much a back and forth discussion or conversation with us. I hope that suits everyone, and having said that, I turn it over now to Dr. Elliott.
Great, thank you, Ms. McKee, and good evening, everyone. As Ms. McKee said, we have several agenda items this evening. On our agenda, there are 4 items that will be presented to the board for action at the October meeting. And then there are 2 items that are just informational items to provide the board with some updates and some information. So starting with our first item, which is an action item for the October meeting, there is an agreement that was shared with the board for professional development with Solution Tree. Solution Tree is an organization we've been using for several years, doing a lot of our PLC work with us. And this professional development that we will be doing with Solution Tree aligns to our strategic plan goal 2 of redefining student success, particularly in emphasizing active student engagement in preparation for 21st century college and a global workforce. And just to give you a summary of what the scope of what this work is, it really targets our curriculum coordinators. In the past several years, we've had a turnover of our curriculum coordinators through some retirements and some changes in some staffing. And those new curriculum coordinators have never really had an opportunity to have professional development around leading their departments in curriculum work. And so the purpose of this professional development is to really work with that group of instructional leaders to refresh their understanding of the backwards designing, curriculum designing process, and also help them build their understanding in how to lead curriculum review, how to lead people in this work as part of their role in teaching and learning. So we will, in the scope of this work with Solution Tree, we'll be working with curriculum expert, Mr. David Ty. He will work with the curriculum leaders to refresh their knowledge. This work will all be virtual. It will be 3 sessions. Each session will be 2 hours long, and the sessions will be geared really at helping the curriculum coordinators build their knowledge in leading this work within their respective departments. The cost of this professional development is just under $10,000, and it is included in our curriculum budget for the 21-22 school year. Are there any questions about this particular item?
Why is it virtual?
It's virtual because of the scope of how we wanted to do it and what the options were with Solution Tree. So Solution Tree's options were a 1 full day for 6 hours in person, or an option to do virtual sessions split. And because of the work we want to do to kind of build over time and build some knowledge, the virtual options seem to be the better fit.
And I'm looking around, I assume then it would be okay for this to be on our consent agenda for next week? Not seeing any objections to that? Great, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Our second item this evening is another agreement. This is our dual enrollment agreement with Gwynedd Mercy University. And this aligns to our strategic plan goal 2 with redefining student success, looking at ways to provide our students with different options in school. So beginning with the 2019-2020 school year, our high school students could opt to take several courses in our business, computers and information technology department as dual enrollment and earn college credit through Gwynedd Mercy University. This agreement that was shared with the board is the 21-22 agreement, and it continues this partnership and this opportunity for our students. To give you a little bit more background on this particular work, there are 4 courses that we offer for dual enrollment at Council Rock through Gwynedd Mercy University. So they're all in the business department: Honors Accounting 1, Honors Marketing, Honors Business Management, and Accelerated Computers for College and Career. The students will pay, if they choose to partake of the dual enrollment, which it's an option, they do not have to do it. They would pay the tuition to the university, $400 per course, so there's no cost to us as a district. They take their courses at Council Rock. Our Council Rock teachers are their teachers of record, and they earn their 3 credit hours from Gwynedd Mercy University. As of today, and the enrollment that we have with our students who opt to take the courses for dual enrollment, we have 55 students who have or are this year taking one of these courses for dual enrollment with Gwynedd Mercy University. To give you a sense of the ones that seem most popular, Honors Marketing, over the last 3 years, we've had 26 students from both high schools, that number includes both high schools, who have taken Honors Marketing for college credit, and we've had 22 students take the Honors Business Management course for college credit. Any questions about this item?
Is this in the program planning book? How do the students
Yes,
find out?
it is
So
in the
it's
program
noted
planning
in
book.
there, and it says there's a fee for this course, this is a college credit course?
Yes, that's correct. That's the option that they can choose that if they wish. And then at the beginning of the year, the teachers for this course provide them with more information about Gwynedd Mercy University, how to pay the tuition and what they need to do.
How they qualify, the students have to qualify for this program?
If they are taking this course, they are eligible to take it for dual enrollment.
Okay. That's great. It's amazing. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is different than the summer classes people take to get like phys ed out of it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Pilmer?
Just to piggyback off that, Joe, if you do take a summer class, that usually counts for college credit too, just in a minute. But no complaints, this is great. Why haven't we considered STEM classes? Why just business classes?
So in our strategic plan, expanding the courses that we offer for dual enrollment is one of our goals. And it's something, obviously, you know, the pandemic has delayed some of the work that we wanted to do around the strategic plan. So that's one of the things that we just haven't been able to really pursue and look at adding courses to that. So this was our starting point, and hopefully we'll be able to expand that in the future.
And you would just use this university?
We may not, no. We would look elsewhere.
And again, there's nothing wrong with it, so there's more you can do with it.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, which we would, so.
I just wanted to note that we've been joined by board colleagues, Mrs. Marcel and Mr. Salmon, and assuming that we're all okay with this, we would like to put it on the consent agenda for next week's meeting.
Just a quick question. Is that
Yes.
being taught in our schools?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Live?
yes, in person. The teachers, our Council Rock teachers are the people teaching the courses. So they're
So what, is it expanded into their roster, I mean, into their schedule, or in addition to?
These are our courses, and they align to a course
Dual credit,
that
okay.
One and Mercy says will
That's
give you
what I
dual
thought.
credit for this.
Okay.
This is really a great
No, it's great
opportunity
stuff.
for our students and a
Absolutely.
really nice partnership for us with Gwen and Mercy.
It is, absolutely.
I'd
Thank
like to see
you.
that number jump,
Yeah.
take advantage of it.
All right. Next item is also an agreement that was shared with the board, and this is another one for some services that we provide to students. This one's a little bit different in that this directly links to our federal Title I and Title II allocations that we get each year. So the federal Esser grants, which are Title I, II, III, and IV, they require school districts to provide non-public schools who are eligible for the funds to receive their equitable share of those monies that are awarded to the school district. So every year, we consult with the eligible non-public schools and in our area, and we determine if they are eligible, what their equitable share is of those funds, and we use that based on the grants guidelines. In that consultation with our non-public schools, we talk about what's the best way to provide these services to those schools. And our schools in our area that we serve agree with us, and we agree to use Bucks County Intermediate Unit to provide those equitable services. And in that way, we set up an agreement with Bucks County IU, and then they go to the non-public schools and provide the services. It's a benefit to the non-public schools as well as to us because in most cases, you can imagine, say, a second grade class at St. Andrew's School may have students from Council Rock, students from New Hope, students from the Chamonix, all in that classroom that may be eligible for services. And rather than trying to figure out how we as a district would send someone there to service, say, 1 or 2 students, that money gets pulled together, and the IU then provides those services to all of those students because all of the districts, use the IU as part of their non-pub services. So Title I equitable services are for reading intervention for students who are identified for needs in reading. Title II is for professional development. So the Title II equitable share of services provides funds for non-public school teachers to participate in professional development opportunities that the IU offers to them. And we get feedback on what kinds of activities or topics they're interested in, and the IU works with them to plan those activities. So under the uniform grant guidance with the ESSA regulations, we, as districts, we're permitted to set up multi-year agreements with a third-party provider so that we don't have to keep negotiating this every year. So we're allowed to do a 3-year agreement. So the agreements that are for the board are both 3-year agreements with the IU as our third-party provider for Title I and Title II services. And the cost each year is based on a couple factors. One, it's based on what our allocation is, how much money we get from the federal government for Title I and Title II, and based on a formula that we use that calculates the number that each non-public school would get. So the amount each year varies based on the number of students that are eligible for Title I and reading support, and in Title II based on the total enrollment of that non-public school. There's a certain percentage of the funds that they're eligible for. So that number will vary every year, and each year of the agreement, we work with the IU to help them understand how much money each school is allocated so that they can adjust appropriately to what they need to do to provide those services. The funds in our allocation also include Title III and IV, and non-public schools have their equitable share of those funds as well. But the rules around Title III and IV are a bit different in that how we provide their equitable share is something we do as ourselves as a district. So Title IV, most of our non-public schools want to use that money for STEM-related materials. So they've been using it the last couple of years to purchase STEM materials that they can use in their buildings. And Title III is for supporting English language learners. So if any of our non-public schools in our geographic area have students who are eligible for English language support, we work with that school to figure out how to provide them that support. So before I go on to that, sorry, I moved ahead. So any questions about this, what actually is two agreements, Title I and Title II, 3-year agreements with the IU?
Yes,
I
Dr.
have
Cooper.
a comment and a question. They're related. One, has our solicitor reviewed these contracts?
Yes.
Okay, in that regard, if he's happy, then I am likely to vote no for these, and I would like them not in the consent agenda, because of point number 5, the public contracts that indemnifies Bucks IU, everybody involved with the Bucks IU, even if they are willful or negligent or omit things, we just indemnify them regardless of how they screw up in all this. And I love the concept, I love the idea, but I'm not indemnifying anybody anymore. So I'll be voting no.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have a comment. I was going to say one of the good things about these contracts, they have a 30-day termination agreement, which shows a lot of trust for both parties, that, you know, it doesn't have to be locked in for 3 years. And when you're able to get out of a contract in 30 years, to me, that shows mutual trust, and appreciate that part of it. I didn't catch the willful negligent omissions of being indemnified. Is interesting, but that provides me, I mean, that warrants more thought on my part tonight. Thank you.
Great. Other questions, comments?
So, Dr. Owen, is there any other group out there besides the IU that could provide this?
So we could, some other districts that have a lot more Title I money than we do, and say like Philadelphia Area School District that has a lot of non-public schools that they serve as well. They might contract with a third-party provider that's not the IU, that actually pushes into the schools, the non-public schools, and provides services. The challenge that we have is because it's so little money, it doesn't warrant contracting with another third-party provider who it's going to cost more money than what we can afford for them to actually provide services to students that make a difference. And so the fact that the IU can push in, provide support to multiple students from different schools or where they would reside is really a benefit both to all of those students and to us as well.
And do all the neighboring districts in Bucks County use the IU for this?
Yes.
And that would be consistent of Montgomery County as well, if you know.
That's pretty consistent among most counties. In my experience in other districts I've worked for, which have been in 2 different counties, the public schools usually contract with the IU to provide the services. Because the IU is doing a really nice job of trying to connect and bring those people together to really help provide the education for those students that are needed. And they already have relationships with the non-public schools for other reasons as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. The next item is an informational item. So in the late spring, I believe it was, at either a board meeting or an ed committee meeting, I presented information about the Esser 2 funds and the ARP, or the American Recovery Plan Esser funds. And we recently received additional ARP Esser funds. This was part of some of a set-aside that the state was allowed to set aside, and then the governor decided to distribute that money to the schools. So those funds, as part of Act 24 of 2021, were distributed to school districts, charter schools, and intermediate units. So similar to the ARP Esser funds, these funds have a spending deadline of September 30th, 2024. So we have time to spend them. And we received $172,125 additional dollars from this funding that we need to allocate and spend. The deadline for the application is November 29th, so we can get that in. Obviously, if we can get it submitted sooner so that we can get the grant approved and begin spending the funds, we would like to do that. So the funds come with some guidelines that I'm going to kind of go over for you, and areas where there's intended spending, things you need to allocate. So there are three main pots of money with this allocation of funds. One pot is summer school, one pot is after school, and the other is learning loss, which has a couple components to it. So we have been allocated just under $25,000 for summer school. And our plan is to use those funds coupled with the other ARP Esser funds to support our expanded summer academy. So to continue to help that program, we want to keep running it for the next couple of years. So we'll use those funds to support that work. The after-school funds, which is just a little under $25,000 as well, we plan to use those funds to support an after-school tutoring program. If you remember, in the spring, I mentioned that we were working in partnership with Delaware Valley University and had some undergraduate students who were serving as tutors to middle school students. The middle school guidance counselors had identified students maybe who were struggling a little bit with completing assignments, getting things handed in on time, keeping organized with their schoolwork. And so the tutors worked virtually with the students to support them in various subject areas and help them with completing work, and were just kind of a good support to help the students. And we saw just with that small group that we were able to work with that it did help many of the students. Their grades came up and they were doing better in school. So we wanted to continue with that work. So we want to use that portion for after school to really support that. And it actually, the funds will pay for the Council Rock staff who are coordinating the work. The Delaware Valley undergraduate students, this is part of some of their coursework and part of some of the pre-service hours that they have to earn as part of their work to become a teacher. So this will be something that they will earn those hours. The Delaware Valley students will be tutoring our students virtually, primarily because transportation for those students, they may not be able to get to the middle schools after school, but our students will stay at school after school, and then the guidance counselors will work to monitor and support the students as they work with the tutors. They'll also work to kind of match the tutors up with students. Last year, when we gathered information about the students interested in tutoring, we gathered information about some of their interests so that we could use that to hopefully pair up some students that might have similar interests that might help to build some relationships and foster some good working habits and a good relationship with some students.
So does that take place like during clinics?
It would be after school, but not on clinic days. So we'll maintain clinic, which is Thursdays at the middle school, and then it'll probably be Tuesday and Wednesday of that same week.
So individual students are identified for that?
Yes.
It's not self-selected?
They'll be identified through the guidance counselor, the students who we feel would benefit from having that relationship.
And then is transportation an issue?
So last year, their parents picked them up and brought them home. And, you know, we checked with those students that were invited first to make sure that was going to be okay. So the guidance counselors worked through that. So we didn't have any issues last year.
That's great.
All right.
I have a question. Are you asking questions about, I'm going to wait till the end?
Sorry.
That's okay. I can keep going if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the final portion of this allocation of funds, which is the largest portion, is targeted towards learning loss. And these funds actually have some specific minimum allocations that you have to put towards certain aspects of learning loss. And so I wanted to go over those separately because each of them we're doing some different things. So a minimum of 30% of the funds need to be targeting social and emotional learning. And what we are planning to do with those funds is use a portion of those to continue to use K&S consulting, which we have been using for the last several years. We worked with K&S Consulting through one of the safety grants that we received. We were able to bring them in. And what K&S Consulting does is they work with identified students, primarily students who are disengaged from school. Attendance is a major issue for those students. Our child study team and folks at our schools have tried different interventions that they're still struggling to be successful to get that student in school. So then they use the services of the KNS counselors to connect with those students and those families and provide some more intensive counseling services and support for those students. We anticipate that the funds for KNS will target probably about 65 students. That's based on the data that we've collected from the last 2 years about how many students they typically worked with in the last 2 years. So it's an estimate. We don't know for certain if that will be the number, but that's what we estimate at this point. Another use of the social emotional learning portion of the funds, we are going to use to purchase materials to support our classroom implementation of an SEL program at the elementary level. So an SEL program at the elementary level is one of our strategies or in our strategic plan. We focus on student wellness, so that's something that we've had a subcommittee that had started doing some of that work before the pandemic, and the work got halted, so they're going to be picking that work back up again so that we can provide some good work with our students at the elementary level on social emotional health and wellness. Closely linked to that, we are required to spend a minimum of 10% of these funds on professional development for social emotional needs. So we are going to use that portion to support the implementation of the programming at the elementary level, using a train-the-trainers model where we will be training folks in the program when we select what that program is, and then using that money to train those folks so that they can support and train within their own buildings and help with the implementation of the program. The final portion of the learning loss part of these funds is a minimum of 8% targeted at reading intervention. We're going to use that portion of these funds to purchase a program called Reading Horizons. It's an intervention that we will use for our neediest kindergarten through 6th grade students. Our literacy specialists and our Title I instructional staff will be the primary people using this resource when they provide reading intervention to students based on assessed need when we identify those students in need. And these kits are something that once we purchase them, we'll be able to use them year after year. So we'll have them for an extended period of time. So those are the main uses that we're planning to use for the funds. As part of the APR Esser grants, as it was in the spring, we do need to share this information about these funds with our parents and our community, which we will be doing via our weekly news. And we're also setting up an email that if parents have feedback that they'd like to provide, they can email it to this email address and provide that feedback to us as we finalize this plan. Any questions? Other questions?
So could you go back 2 slides? I guess when I look at the summer after-school program for tutoring, where we're using Del Val students, I'm wondering how the funds disseminated in that situation.
So the funds will pay for the guidance counselor's time to coordinate the program.
Okay, very good. If we move on to the next slide, KNS, is there a time frame? Is that all you estimate that will be for 1 year?
So our goal with these funds with KNS is to actually use the funds for 2 years with them.
Okay, all right. And then I think my last question was with the reading intervention. I feel like, how are our scores in reading? And is it, you said there's a minimum of 8% or 10%? Are these hard guidelines that they gave you as far as the percentages of how to spend the money?
The percentages here are the minimum that we must spend in those areas. So we must spend a minimum of 8% on reading intervention. How we choose to spend that is up to the district to decide, but we have to spend at least 8% of it on that.
But if so the minimums don't add up to 100, so you could
Correct.
focus more on which
That's
you
correct.
are a little bit more.
Yes, we are.
Because to me, I think the reading may have suffered a lot the last couple of years. If that's where our scores are. I think that's a big focus.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have other funds going towards social and emotional learning, don't we? Have other grants. We're paying for guidance counselors for few years?
Yes, we are paying for guidance counselors with one of the grants that we.
Right.
Yeah.
So I really think, assess the reading and see how much that suffered. And that's just something I'm curious about, but I'm glad I asked this question so people see how the money's being spent so they can give feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had a quick question. In terms of the reading intervention and some of that support, what is the timeline for like the school year for when you would be looking at that in terms of the assessment to the students, and then how do the kids like fit into that? Would they be used kind of later on after someone is qualifying for it, or you could just, I think this is wonderful, but I just was trying to figure out like when, for getting the kids, when they're going to be coming in, and how this fits together.
Right. So we are in the process now of finalizing beginning of the year assessments to identify students who would benefit from reading support. Given the timing of these grant funds and our application, obviously our reading specialists, our literacy specialists and Title I folks are probably going to be starting interventions with students before we would be able to get the kids. That said, as soon as we get the application submitted, if it is approved, as soon as it's approved, we can begin expending the funds. And so we can order the kits and get them as quickly as possible. We already have quotes from the vendors, so we know what it's going to cost us. We have some of those things that we're ready to, when it's approved, get everything submitted and get things ordered. And then when they arrive, the folks will, decide, all right, we're going to switch to using Reading Horizons, or perhaps with some groups, maybe what they're using they'll continue with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very briefly, that $90,000 for KNS, what is, and 65, so what does $1,400 per kid get us? Or what do they do for kids?
So-
give me a little, as much,
Sure. So of that almost $90,000, $60,000 of it will be for K&S, and then the bulk of it, the rest of it will be for the materials for the elementary SEL program. So the K&S counselors, how this works is after, as I said, the child study team at a building has tried intervention, it's not working, they connect with the K&S counselors, and a counselor will begin working with that particular family. So they'll work with the student, work with the family, to try to come up with strategies to get that student into school, improve attendance, help them get engaged back in school. As a counselor, they'll make decisions about how to support that family based on what they're seeing with that child and the needs at that time. And they will continue, the counselors work in our district 2 days a week for this support, so they'll connect with those families more intensely on those 2 days of the week and might visit the home, connect with the student in school, so they'll adjust what they do. They continually check in with the child study team to provide updates on progress. How's it going? What can we do differently? So there's always that connection to the child study team or our social workers and counselors to make sure we're keeping on top of trying to help that student be successful and get them back into school.
I think it's a good program. I just wanted the public to kind of hear, again, what we're doing with it and why.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
I just got a comment. I'm sorry, Denise, please.
Just like, the application is due in November, how long before?
That's a really hard question to answer because right now the federal programs division at the state is overwhelmed with all of the applications. So for example, our ARP Esser funds, our application was submitted in end of July, beginning of August. It is still under review, so they haven't yet marked it as approved, and it's just because they're inundated with getting so many extra federal funds. They now have to approve not only all of the federal grants, Title I, II, III, and IV, they also have to approve all of the Esser grants, and so it's a lot for them to do. So they're trying to get through it as quickly as possible because they recognize that districts need this money. So, which is part of the reason why I'm hoping we can get this grant submitted as quickly as possible. So hopefully the turnaround time for it will be soon.
And probably accounts for why it has a 2024 deadline.
Yeah. That's part of it, yes. And also to make sure that you, as a district, can use these funds over time. And, you know, some of the things, if you remember when we received the ARRA or funds years ago from the federal government, that some of the timing of when you had to spend those funds made it difficult for you to be creative and flexible with how to stretch them out and use them for different things. So giving us until 2024 gives us the opportunity to really stretch things out. So it gives us the time and flexibility, for example, with the elementary SEL program to earmark those funds, but not have to make a decision yesterday about what we're doing, so that we can really make sure we're making a wise choice.
I think it's terrific.
Thanks.
Yeah, just a quick comment. So I love it. I think it's great. But is this something that the board should consider fronting the money for now
I was just going to ask that.
to launch this? Because my kids can't wait 2 years and expand it 3 years. Should this be something we just look to adopt financially, knowing the money's coming at some point and getting in front of this? Because every day that they're behind in learning is a day that we could be doing something.
So
I mean,
we don't,
$172,000 on a $244 million budget.
yeah, we don't need to do that, because basically, once the grant is approved, we can start spending the funds even if we haven't gotten the money yet. And then as soon as we get the money, we'll, you know, pay for the things that we're spending it on. So typically with federal grants, especially with the grants related to like Title I and Esser, you can, once your grant has been submitted, you can begin to allocate funds. And then, you know, once you get the payments, because they come in installments, you'll be able to pay for the things you need to. So I don't know that it's necessary to front it. You know, I don't want to spend the money until we get it
I'd like to see the
submitted.
wheels in motion start tomorrow, is what I'm saying. I don't want to wait for the state to say, here, you got it, to Denise asking the question.
But there are already intervention things in place, not like
Yes.
we're ignoring this.
Correct, that's correct.
So this would enhance and support a lot of the efforts that we're already doing. It's not like there's no meeting.
No, but
happening.
if the extra money's needed, I think we should, whatever we need to do to get this started, and then some.
Sure, so when it comes
And
to.
look, tell me no, that's fine too.
No.
I mean, $172,000 is not a lot of money.
Right.
When we're talking about kids that have lost education.
So the K&S consulting, that's something that is in process already with not only with these funds, but also with some special education funds. So we'll be able to start that almost immediately. And then once we get these funds, we'll
Mix
it up. You know, the SEL program, we need to select it. We need to figure out what that is. So we do need to wait on that. And the professional development goes with that. And the reading intervention piece, as Ms. Brooks said, we're already doing things. We already have things in place. We just want to make sure that this is a program that we felt, you know, we have in a couple of our schools, and we want to make sure we have it in all of our schools. So we want to purchase that.
I think it's a fair offer and a fair conversation if it goes wonky. I don't think we wait on anything.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
enhance it as much as we can.
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah.
Thank
My
you.
goal is to get it in as quickly as possible.
Yep, absolutely.
And
Thank you.
that was my comment, at least at $20,000. If you know you need them and you want them, and
Let's
the
do it.
board can front run it for you, fine. I mean, that's kind of where I was with that. So,
Okay,
you know, we know the money's coming back anyway. So if you want to put that on as a board agenda item to purchase them, if you're certain that's what you want, it sounds like you've already piloted them. So why wait?
I agree.
We know with supply chains and stuff that could take a while anyway, so let's get it.
okay.
That's my opinion.
I can
I mean,
work on that. I mean, I can definitely work on that and see how we can, in our business office, move through with creating the account codes that we need to create and do what we need to do.
Yeah, I'm looking around this day, I don't see anybody not supporting doing
No.
something like that, so.
Okay, I'll begin working on it.
Sorry.
It's quite all right.
It's a good thing. It's the kids.
Yeah. Any other questions about the Esser, the ARP Esser funds? All right. This next item is also for information. If you remember, it's been, I'm really not even sure how many years we've had. The Keystone exams have continued to be pushed back year by year. We're not going to count it as a graduation requirement this year. Now it's this class, graduating class. Now it's this graduating class. So Act 158 creates alternate pathways for the Keystones. So based on Act 158, the graduating class of 2023, which is our current juniors, will have 5 options to demonstrate proficiency in post-secondary preparedness. So that class will no longer have to pass the Keystone exams, although the last several classes also didn't have to. But the district will be responsible for tracking those pathways and ensuring that students meet the graduation requirements with one of those pathways. And you will see that the pathways that have been created, pretty much any student will be able to meet one of them because there's a lot of opportunity and options. The graduating class of 2022 is not required to pass the Keystone exams to graduate, and they do not have to meet an alternate pathway. So they're still under the umbrella of they don't have to worry about this. The students still must take the Keystone exams because they are part of our state's Esser application, and they're part of federal accountability. So they still have to take them, but they just won't be required to pass them anymore to graduate. So we will publish information about this in our high school program planning guide, and we'll also post information about this on each high school's website. So I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of the options because as we get to options 3, 4, and 5, there's a lot of opportunity and things to choose from. So option 1 of the pathways is basically they are proficient on each of the Keystones. Option 2 is they earn a combined composite score of 4,452 or better on the 3 Keystones. So when they look at their 3 scores together, if their composite score is 4,452 or higher, they meet that pathway and that option and they graduate, or they pass, have proficiency. Option 3 is where we get into a little bit more of possibilities for students. So in option 3, they demonstrate completion of course content related to Keystone. So biology, English, Algebra 1. And they meet some career and tech indicators. So for example, a student who might go to MBIT and they pass an industry-based certification. So they demonstrate proficiency in the 3 courses and they pass an industry-based certification. Option 4, same first part, they demonstrate proficiency in the 3 Keystone-related courses, and they demonstrate proficiency on an alternative assessment. Alternative assessments include such things as AP exams, SATs. They also include things like, I'm going to pull my cheat notes out because this is where it gets into lots of different options for students. So they can get a score, a completion of a concurrent enrollment course in an academic content area associated with the Keystone exam, a successful completion of a pre-apprenticeship program, or they're accepted into an accredited nonprofit institution of higher ed and they show evidence of their ability to enroll in college level coursework. Now, exactly what that means, I'm not really sure, but that is something that we'll get more guidance on from the state as we continue to move forward with this.
So does completion of course just mean passing?
Yes. Yes. Option 5, very similar in the first part where they show, completion of course content related to the Keystones. And then there are multiple options. There's 3 additional pieces of evidence that they need to show. So those can include established scores on ACT, SATs, AP exams. They can include completion of an approved service learning project. They can include things like an internship, successful completion of an internship, or guarantee of full-time employment. So the options make it possible for students to demonstrate their preparedness for post-secondary in a variety of ways, and then as a district, we'll need to identify basically how many students passed or demonstrated that via each option, is my understanding of how the state will ask us for that information. Any questions about the Keystone pathways?
So we're still required to do the Keystones.
Yes,
If they pass with proficiency, then they automatically got option one.
yes.
Is that still probably looking at the other options? Every student's unique, so this is opening it up to more unique situations where people may struggle with their standardized tests.
Yeah.
Which option is there one option that's easier than the other? Where it really depends on the child.
I think it depends on the student. I wouldn't say there's one option that's easier than the other. I think that what this gives us and gives our students is the recognition, and I think that the recognition from the feedback that the state received relative to some of the stakeholder feedback that they gathered around this, is that preparedness for post-secondary should not be equated just with the passing of 3 standardized tests. That there are many ways that students can demonstrate their readiness for the choices that they make after they graduate. And so this reflects that opportunity to show that preparedness in a variety of different ways.
But how many students do we get on an annual basis that take the exams and are not proficient? Is that a large percentage? Or is it, and then I guess they have to retake until they pass, or there's some kind of remediation?
So in the past, when the Keystone was a graduation requirement, students had to retake it and had to participate in some kind of remediation for that Keystone course before they retook the assessment. With this alternative, they don't need to do that anymore. They take the Keystone once. If they wanted to retake the Keystone, they could, but they take the Keystone once, and that's all they need to do in the 3 subject areas.
So instead of remediation, there's other ways to go.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Joe, I'll just augment that with, I don't know that it correlates with easier, it might, but as you go down that list, it certainly becomes more flexible,
Yeah.
right, in terms of the options that students will have. And I'll share just personal opinion based upon some personal experience. Way back when this first started, and there were 6 Keystone exams at that time, I think, and you had to pass. I mean, it was a very scaled up version to what it is today, and I mean the ultimate high stakes. And I personally saw, multiple students, but one young lady in particular who was graduating high school with very good grades, challenging course load, just struggled taking those standardized tests, and admitted into 3 or 4 highly selective colleges. And yet the state of Pennsylvania was saying that if this was truly in effect at that time as a graduation requirement, yeah, you're good enough to get admitted into these colleges, but you're not good enough to be granted a diploma. So I see this as a good thing and welcome it. It's a good change. It's a big change from where we were a number of years ago with all this.
Thank you. I appreciate that and agree.
And if I may just make a comment, when we spoke about this before, as they're offering a variety of alternate pathways, I just would appreciate if the state would also consider military service or acceptance into a military academy. I would really like to see that as one of the pathways allowed here.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Mary Ann. I know when I've read through all of this documentation, there's nothing in there that says that. So I think that would be some good feedback to provide the state, and see if there's one of these options where they would consider, like for example, if you're guaranteed full-time employment, would they consider that akin to military service and count? I don't know, but that's definitely something good to. Yeah, I agree, to give some feedback to the state on that. You're welcome.
When was the last time we actually gave a Keystone exam with everything going? Did we give Keystones last year?
Yes, in the spring.
We did?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had the option to give them in the spring or wait until the fall.
Extend until, I believe the window
fall.
was until the end of September.
Okay.
We opted to
chose
give them
the-
all.
When you said high stakes, I mean, kid takes biology when as a freshman, and they're juniors now. I wanted to make sure that they don't have to relearn,
Yeah,
restudy.
exactly.
So.
And that's why we chose to, as crazy as things were, in the
Oh,
spring,
I
that's
agree.
exactly why we chose to administer it in the spring, to not even allow that summer gap in
Mhm.
between from
Okay.
a retention standpoint.
And that was one of the biggest problems with having to pass them to graduate and then take remedial courses, because your point is a good one. You take biology in your freshman year, your sophomore year, if you don't pass that Keystone, you're moving on to chemistry. Well, what you're learning in chemistry is not the same as biology, so, having to make some adjustments to student schedules and figure out creative ways to provide that remediation that was required became very challenging and difficult. So this is definitely a welcome change. Any other questions? All right, so moving on to our last item for the evening. This item is an action item as well. And this item is the renewal of our membership as a member district of the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Frazier first.
Yeah, just a couple opening remarks here. Obviously, DVCEE, our membership with them and this membership renewal has seems to have taken on a little life of its own. And so I really hope that the information that we present this evening is clear and straightforward, so folks understand what it is and what it is not. Because I think there's a lot to like about the offerings, our membership, and how we benefit from it. And there isn't a whole lot, if anything, that falls into the other side. By way of background, we've been a member of DVCEE since 2017. It is part, Dr. Elliott earlier a couple times referenced our strategic plan. This is also part of our strategic plan, so it certainly supports those efforts. And one of the things that I just want to say right off the bat, and Dr. Elliott will dive deeper into all of these, is this work is really about all students in the Council Rock School District. When we talk about diversity, that first piece in DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, when we talk about diversity, we're talking about diversity in all of its various forms. And there are a multitude of layers of diversity. And one of the things that's really important is, as we look at today, as we look at the here and now, we want to make sure that every single student, whether they represent one of those areas of diversity or whether they don't, we want to make sure that every single student feels welcomed in our schools, feels valued in our schools, has every opportunity to succeed and does succeed in our schools. And at the same time, there's a forward-looking lens to this work, because one of the things that, in order for us to be the best that we can be and best serve our students, is preparing our students for that year 13. So we know that the vast majority of our students go to college. Chances are, when students go to a college, they're going to be in an environment that isn't quite the same as our 72 square miles. I think that's a relatively fair statement to make. And for the rest of our students, whether they're going into the military, into the job force, into some other pathway, for most of those students, the same also holds true. And regardless of who the student is or what their pathway is, when they graduate from our Council Rock High School, we want them to hit the ground running. We want them to be successful. And so this work truly is about all students, all 10,500 students in the school district. In the school district, there's a here and now purpose. There's a future orientation purpose to this. And like I said, we've been a member since 2017. They offer professional development workshops for our teaching staff, for our administrators. They also offer student programming. So our high school students, and I believe even middle school students, are able to participate in some activities. There's an HR component that Ms. Taylor is able to participate in, which is really valuable to us as a school district. And then you just have a networking component around this work, because none of this work is easy. And in the Delaware Valley portion of this, because there are different consortia through the Consortium for Excellence and Equity, our Delaware Valley Consortium has 38 member districts. We're one of 38. So to be able to sit with those 37 other districts and talk about what they're doing, what we're doing, what's working, what's not working, what are challenges, how do you overcome those challenges, is tremendously valuable. So we're here to provide this overview this evening, and certainly this comes with our full recommendation. Dr. Elliott.
Thank you. So, as Dr. Frazier said, this membership really aligns to two of our strategic plan goals. First is student wellness. One of our strategies in student wellness is to embrace and incorporate diversity in all of its various dimensions and continue to build an inclusive and welcoming environment for all of our students. And we want all of our students, every single one of them, to feel welcome, to feel safe, to feel valued and heard. And we want to lift them all up. And our membership in DVCEE provides the supports to help us reach this goal. Our second, the membership aligns to our second strategic plan goal, redefining student success, in looking at identifying the academic and non-academic markers or measures that are hallmarks of student success and serve as our guideposts for desired outcomes for all of our district students. If you think about what Dr. Frazier said about that year 13, when they graduate, what are those markers and those hallmarks? And that membership really helps to provide us with the tools and support to increase our understanding of ways to help our students build what those hallmarks are, build that ability to help them feel safe and valued, and really make sure that they have what they need when they leave us after they graduate. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on DVCEE to kind of build on a little bit of what Dr. Frazier said. So it's a regional network of school districts in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I know there also are some New York schools as well. There's a Long Island consortium as well. And each of the groups in the consortium are geographically based. So their relative proximity. However, one of the benefits with the consortium is that oftentimes there are events that bring, whether it's virtually or in person, bring members from the different consortia groups together. So in addition to being able to network within your consortia, you can network outside, so you get some varied perspectives. The consortium has actually served over its time over 150 school districts, intermediate units. It's worked with the College Board and other organizations, including Pennsylvania Department of Education and New Jersey, to really support success for all students. DVCEE has been part of University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education since 2004. And I think it's important to note, with respect to Penn, that recently in a U.S. News and World Report, Penn's grad school tied for #1 with Harvard as the best school in education. And I think that our geographic location makes it a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to, benefit from Penn's excellent reputation to benefit our students and our staff as we reach our goals of our strategic plan. This is DVCEE's mission, and this is the mission that drives the work that the consortium does in supporting districts. So they're really focused, as you see, on really targeting all students, preparing all students for post-secondary success in education and life. And, Penn wants to target also our diverse populations of students, particularly those who traditionally maybe struggle academically in our current school systems, students who might be the first in their family to be attending college, students from various diverse backgrounds who, maybe need a little bit more support in different ways to be successful in school. And so Penn continues to target all students, but really wants to make sure we're thinking about how do we meet the needs of different groups in different ways. They have 6 goals. as an organization or as a consortium. So, at the top of that is the goal for, we want high academic achievement and student outcomes for all students. So the focus on rigor for everybody is critical to them, and wanting to make sure our students are prepared. And then really thinking about equity and equitable access and inclusion, and thinking about making sure we're providing what students need. And when we think about how DVCEE thinks about equity and equitable aspects of education, it's about thinking about what is it that this student needs to be successful that might be a little bit different from this student, to make sure that they both are able to reach high levels of achievement and be successful in post-secondary education and life after they graduate. So some of our membership benefits, as Dr. Fraser said, we've been a member since 2017. We've participated in professional development with local, regional, and national experts. We've engaged in many networking opportunities and problem-solving opportunities with member districts. We've participated in the recruiting fairs, and we've had students participate in some of the leadership institutes that DVCEE provides for mostly middle school and high school students. We've had some high school students participate in that. I wanted to give you a sampling of some of the previous kinds of programs that were offered to get a sense of some of the topics that DVCEE has really focused on in their work with districts. So some of those programs have focused around cultural proficiency and equity and how to facilitate that in the school, how to really make sure students feel safe, valued, and heard and belong. There have been activities around using technology and enhancing classrooms to build students' executive functioning skills. So their ability to have self-control, ability to make decisions, ability to organize and plan. All of those important skills when you think about success in college and career are things that are really critical for you to be able to have under your belt. Looking at engaging and teaching diverse learners, as well as programs on really understanding how to respond to student stress and trauma. How do we help students who experience trauma and stress? And that's been a focus of DVCEE over the last years.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you elaborate on what the diverse learner is? I mean different things to different, it probably means different things to different people. So what's a diverse learner?
Well, a diverse learner is a learner who perhaps is someone who brings some different backgrounds and experiences to the classroom that maybe the majority of other students in that classroom do not have. So as an example, an English language learner would be considered a diverse learner because of some of their background experience. A student who in a district like ours that, we might have students who come from a Jewish background could be considered a diverse learner in different contexts. A student of color could be considered a diverse learner in different contexts. So it varies. So the definition is kind of broad in thinking about looking at all of the aspects of what a student brings to a contract. Okay?
That's fine.
Perfect. And I want to also highlight, these are some of the programs being offered this year as part of DVCEE. So looking again at how do you sustain a culture of dignity? And a culture of dignity is where, students feel that they're respected for who they are in their school, in their classroom, in their community. And by being respected for who they are and building relationships with the people in their community, their peers, but also their teachers, it increases their sense of belonging and their sense of, feeling like, this is a place for me, I fit here, and I can be successful here. Looking at democratic classrooms and helping students to understand how do you use your voice as a student to take action and take informed action? How do you really make choices about when you're going to speak and what it means to understand perspective and be an informed, democratic, contributing citizen? Looking at family engagement as well. Looking at how we can use language as educators to help our students learn and thrive. The ways that we engage in conversations with students, how we ask questions, the language that we use in our classrooms, how can we use that to help our students be successful? And of course, our recruiting fair as well. The cost for our membership is $12,000. And again, as Dr. Frazier said earlier, that those benefits include the professional development that we get, attendance at different events and networking opportunities, and what we bring back and share within our district to support each other and grow as colleagues. And this is currently budgeted in our professional development. It's our curriculum budget, but it's the professional development portion of our curriculum budget for this year. So, if our goal as a district is, as we've said, to lift up every student and embrace a diversity every student brings in each of its forms to our school community, we want to make sure that every student has a safe space in school to learn and grow. And our continued membership with the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity will continue to serve as a valuable network and resource to help us reach this goal for our students. So are there any questions, or Dr. Frazier, did you want to add anything else?
Just I think one closing comment. One of the things that's really important to us, and again, we've been a member since 2017, as many folks in this room and those listening at home will remember. We had some unfortunate incidents in the aftermath of the November 2016 election that precipitated a number of things, including our membership with DVCEE. And I think that we've learned over these past 4 or 5 years, we've grown, we've sort of evolved. And one of the pieces that is just so critically important that we get right, and I think we're getting it more and more right, that frankly wasn't on the radar, I would say, back in 2017, 2018 perhaps, is this idea, and everyone's at least read me saying this, if not heard me saying it, that in the process of lifting everyone up or anyone up, we don't want anyone else feeling badly about who they are, their lot in life, what they're born into, whatever. And that can happen sometimes with this work. And we never, ever want that to happen. And that might be the thing that I appreciate the most about DVCEE, is that alignment is there with that group. So, by way of example, there's nothing that's going to happen within this work or work that we take back around privilege or things like that, making folks feel badly about themselves in the process of trying to lift other folks up. It's not what we're interested in doing. It's not what DVCEE espouses. We also work with Living Strong. It certainly isn't what Living Strong espouses. And really, we've made some shifts in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years in that regard to make sure that the organizations, those two in particular, that we choose to work with indeed are aligned with our belief system, and acknowledging here that our belief system, I think, has just become more informed, more educated. It's changed, but it's just become more informed and evolved along the way.
Great. Ms. McKee.
Thank you. Let's open it up for discussion.
Is this the same organization that's doing a report for us?
It is.
Do we have that report yet?
No, but even
We do not. They're doing some final edits to it.
My take on this membership is, I don't know that I want to give them any more money until I see a product from before. I know they're not related, but they are. It's the same organization, and we've been waiting a very long time for this report, I think. So it's fine. I agree with this, other than I'd like some expedition on this report.
it's definitely coming, and
It's time.
it might even be here before Thursday's meeting. I don't know.
What was the time frame that they gave us when we approved?
I don't know that they.
There was a lot of front end
did.
work, and then they interviewed us. I mean, I
Yeah,
met
and
with Bob
then
Jarvis and.
right, and their folks are working more in a volunteer capacity. You might remember a number of them are school district employees, not from council rock, but from, superintendents or other kinds of folks, and summer hits and people have vacations. And so it's just hard. If we had this same work done, fast forward 3 months or 6 months, and we didn't have that summer there, I think we probably would have had this report 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I think the summer really impacted it.
And that's, my concern is not with this per se.
Yeah.
It's just,
No,
seem to be waiting a long time.
No, I can appreciate that. I think that's why.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to support you guys. I know you really feel strongly about this. You've been doing it for 4 years. I have some questions, and there's a lot of concern about, as you said, there's no bleed between, I think you said critical race theory in this thing is not the same.
I didn't say that here.
Oh, you didn't say that here. Okay, sorry, my bad.
But I have no issue saying that.
Sure, that's fine.
And
that's fine, but
let me say it, because there is no connection, no correlation, no anything between this and critical race theory.
Okay, and I appreciate that. The goal here is that every student feels valued, safe, and succeeds, right? And lift up every student. So by being a member of this consortium for 4 years, how have we measured the benefit to the district, seeing where we were before and where this has actually shown benefits to the kids? Because what I see is we are doing the professional development, and it bleeds down to the staff some way or another. You guys are making differences. And how are you measuring that? Because we're talking about these things that we want to do, but we've been doing this for 4 years, and I'd like to see how we gain the benefit and quantify that.
Yeah, let me start by saying, and then Dr. Elliott and Dr. Sanko, you all certainly should jump in here as you see fit. Been doing it for 4 years, but remember that we've been in the pandemic for the past 18 months, which is
2.5 years.
Disrupted, all kinds of things. So, so we're really looking at a shorter duration of time. I think that right now, and again, our work has ebbed and flowed with this and evolved, like I spoke to earlier. And remember, too, that this is one of 2 key components that we have. The other one is Living Strong that we work with. So really any measuring that we do or assessing that we do or impact analysis that we do is a combination of both of them, because they really dovetail into the same desired outcomes. I think that one of the most significant changes that we can point to today relative to, call it 2016 or even 2017 or even 2018, is that piece around lifting all kids up without pushing other kids down. And look, I'll say this, even at our level, when we first did training, probably back in 2017, when we first did training, we did some training of adults, of our staff, on an in-service day and it was training that we picked, like senior level administration, like we are the ones who picked it, that did just that to a group of adults, where some people felt lifted up and a bunch of other people felt pushed down and diminished and demoralized, and that was a real, wow, that was a miss. Why was it a miss? And so we had that going on at the time, again, circa 17, maybe a little bit into 18, I'm not sure. Whereas today, you're seeing, there's none of that taking place. And then, obviously, all roads lead to the classroom. So it's not about what happens in that adult training room. It's about what's happening with teachers and kids. And I think the level of intentionality, the level of empathy around it, the level of really making sure that every kid has someone to go to, and every kid truly, and it's hard in a district like ours. It just is. I mean, this is a bubble. I say that a lot. I never mean it in any derogatory way. It just we are in a lot of ways a very homogeneous community. And so when you don't fit into that, it's hard. And I a long way to go, which is why we need this membership and why we need to continue other efforts. But I think when you look at it today, as opposed to 2-4 years ago, we're doing a much better job of helping all students to feel welcome. And then taking that second piece that is about all students and forward thinking, right now, it's probably more in the realm of exposure than anything else. I don't know that we've at least systemically gone too much beyond that, but there's value in exposure. And our hope would be to build off of that exposure in the future, and that exposure is good because we don't want our students to be exposed to anything significant for the first time when they're out of the home, out of the school district, and kind of on their own. So I think a lot more of all of that is happening now than what was the case 2, 3, 4 years ago. That said, I think that for the sake of all kids, we still have a whole lot more that we can and should do.
Okay, I've got 2 more points, if that's okay, 2 more. Because this is a big topic, and it came to us, but we never really had a discussion about it. So I'd like to make sure that all that stuff is tied back to the efforts that we got through the networking and workshops. That would be really important. I'm losing my train of thought as usual, but I'm going to move over to something else. When I talk about the memberships that we're looking here, I didn't see that Philadelphia School District is a member of the consortium, nor some of the other people in our district. You have Bristol, both Bristols, Morrisville, Pennsbury, Quakertown, Central Bucks. Some of those are very diverse school districts, and I'm just wondering why, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, why something like Philadelphia wouldn't be a focus of this work.
I mean, as far as why Philadelphia is not a member, we can't answer that. That's a decision that the Philadelphia School District has to make about whether they want to join the consortium or not.
Right, okay. And then also, you spoke about there's an HR component to this, and that we could probably measure the benefit. How has it helped? Is it diversity in staff? Is it the staff feeling good about themselves, or what's the HR component?
Yeah, I think over time, again, the pandemic has interrupted that as well. But it's both of those pieces, I think. It's a recruitment focus. We will always, without exception, hire the best candidate that we have. I'm a firm believer from past experience that the best teacher comes in every walk of life and every form of diversity. Seen it time and time again. What we want to do, and again, this is the piece where it's hard because we are a pretty homogeneous community. Not everyone who comes from a more diverse background is necessarily comfortable working in our community, and probably even more so not comfortable living in our community. So we have our work cut out for us, but I think it's really important that we have a workforce, especially from a professional staff standpoint, our teaching staff and our administrative staff, that we have diversity that at least reflects our student body. And right now that's not the case. And then the other piece is, look, once you recruit folks, if they're the best person and they get hired, then it becomes about that second piece that you spoke to, which really gets at the heart of retainment, right? And so we want folks to feel comfortable, we want them to feel valued, all the same thing that we want for our students. So Christine Taylor, of course, is the one who's at the forefront of that. DVCEE runs recruiting fairs, so she's making lots of connections with different institutions of higher education and that sort of thing. So I think that foundation has been being built. It continues to be built a little bit slower here again over the past year or two. But I think that's what we're looking for, and we're making some, not as much progress as what I would like, but we're making as much progress as I think is probably feasible at this point.
With the HR, that's the thing, I'm like, okay, so we have a foundation, what's the goal and how far have we gone, And that's not for today, that's for on next meeting when Christine has a chance to look at it. I'd like to try to get some metrics of where we're going with this. And so, look, it's not the money, and it's somewhat of a personal thing to me where I don't want to put people into categories anymore. I'm trying to get away from putting people into categories. That would be my solution to a lot of the issues that we have, if we can just get rid of the categories. Because we say we're a homogeneous district, what are we talking about? If you're just talking about the color of somebody's skin, that's one thing, but I think we're very diverse in so many different ways. As you said, just from a religious standpoint or orientation or whatever you want, there's a lot of difference, and I think focusing more on groups and putting people into categories is almost counterintuitive. It's counterproductive to the ultimate goal of just respecting everybody for who they are and loving them just the way they are, And maybe we're creating a problem sometimes by trying to help too much. So I'd ask again why Philadelphia wouldn't partake in something like this, and some other, if you want us to talk about minority, populations, why wouldn't what's the solution from University of Pennsylvania Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consortium about what's going on in low income and low income areas like Philadelphia? That would be a real good question I'd like to answer. Thank you, but I do appreciate, as I said, what you're trying to do.
Mr. Salmon?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Marcel?
I had a question kind of just piggybacking off of what Joe just said. Going forward, if we wanted to try to evaluate if there are staff that go to some of these sessions, like how they like them, or just is there something that we can do, maybe not looking back, but going forward to see, do people value going, or just, and I'm not someone who knows how to evaluate that, that's not what I do, but I just am wondering if that's something in the future that might be helpful so that we can get a sense of if certain types of sessions are helpful, or if students are participating some type of again, just getting a little bit of feedback, and perhaps they would even, or maybe they already do that. I don't know what the answer is, but it just might be helpful to be able to, either, to be able to quantify it, and it may not be a metric, but, maybe it's some type of little survey, or, I don't know. I know Denise knows a lot about this area. So anyway, just a thought.
I can say, I know that DVCEE, after each of their sessions, they do a survey. They gather feedback for themselves. And prior to the pandemic, when we had attended some sessions, after those sessions, I usually followed up with the people, because I knew everybody that was attending things. So I would follow up with those people anecdotally and ask them, how was it? What did you think of it? How's it going to help you? And and in most cases, the people that were selecting to go to the different sessions were going because it was something that they're working on, or they want to work on within their building, their school, or their department. So they would give feedback relative to, oh, this is my takeaway, this is what I'm going to do. So it was more anecdotal in a sense than it was like a survey, but that's definitely something we could look at doing to gather some feedback for those folks who attend different sessions.
Yeah, and I don't know, even outside of this, if there are other opportunities that, just to get a sense from staff about where we're investing our money. We only have so much money for professional development, being able to put it in the right place, based on what you guys are kind of hearing. That's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I completely support this, and I think we're very lucky to have access to an organization like this and so close. It's not the only organization there is that support schools. So I'm sure Philadelphia School District or other school districts are taking advantage of other things since this is so critically important. The other thing is I agree with Joe about, not grouping people and whatnot, but that's exactly what this is. It's about equity. It's about making sure that everything is equitable so that all student experiences are the same. For me, I mean, it is without any hesitation that I would support this. My question is, though, how is the participation in some of these things, who has actual access to this? And then for those who participate, how is the learning or the experiences of those shared with others? And how do you make sure that all of this is appreciated? Because the thing is that there are some things where metrics can come into play, and we can talk about that. But there are many parts of this that aren't directly measurable. We cannot measure that a student comes to school and is comfortable being themselves easily. We cannot measure that people, students feel safe at school easily. And so part of this is elevating the dialogue and the understanding and educating ourselves, that's what professional development is, to make sure that we have an awareness of how to think about students in a way that we may not otherwise. That's what unconscious bias is. If we fall back and say that, don't blame me, it's unconscious, I don't know. I mean, we all have brains, therefore everyone has unconscious bias. And these types of trainings are things that help us deliberately think about how can we make our teaching experiences better? How can we make the experiences for students better? So I just want to try to understand, it's a very nominal amount of money for a lot of, but a lot of value. How does this spread out so that the learning and the value is reaching the greatest numbers?
So DVCEE has within each district, kind of their main contact person, and that happens to be me for their professional development opportunities. So I would receive the events and flyers that then I can distribute and share, and then typically what we do is I reach out to the building principals first. Here are the opportunities that are being offered for this year. Would you like to attend or have staff attend? Obviously, with many professional development opportunities, there's often a limit of, how many participants total can attend a complete workshop that they offer. So sometimes we have number limits on how many people we can send to different workshops. And, we make decisions, with the principals of, okay, I want to send a team, or these are the people that we're going to send. Sometimes if it's a program that has value from a broader district perspective, we'll work as an administrative team to identify who are the folks that we would like to ask if they would be interested in attending, and it might be a varied perspective of some administrators, some teachers, with the intention that you're going to, we would like you to go to this and then bring back and help us in planning how to incorporate that information into some work that we're doing or work that we will be doing. So that's kind of, the structure of how it works. The recruiting fair is a bit different because it's a recruiting fair, but the workshops are all structured in that way. And, there's a lot of opportunity within the workshop itself. They're structured so that if you're bringing a team of people, there's time built into that workshop for that team to work together to plan an action plan, brainstorm, what are we going to do, how do we take this back? And if you happen to be someone that's there without a team, because that does sometimes happen with some districts, they connect you with someone else that's, maybe close or similar to help you in thinking and processing. Thank you.
I'll take a minute then, if everyone's had a chance. I also am very supportive of this. I think this is money very well spent. I'm pleased that we've been a member since 2017, and I think it would be really a step backward for us to stop our membership at this point. If anything, I believe we've laid some groundwork that absolutely needs to be continued. And in listening to my board colleagues, Mr. Hidalgo, I understand we tend to look for, things that we can measure and what are the metrics and show me the numbers involved. It seems to me that so much of the benefit of our membership and the work that we're engaging with here is so intangible. When we're talking about building inclusive community, we're developing a culture of dignity. These are really kind of amorphous things, but very necessary things for our students to feel valued, to feel heard, which makes them better students. It makes them better people. It makes them, function better and be happy where they are. For our staff, I so want them to receive the benefit of workshops that give them the tools to recognize, I have a student who has experienced trauma. How do I relate to that student in a way that is supportive and helpful? To help our teachers receive these kind of tools, I think is ultimately important. And again, there are just so many other intangibles to me, like just the alliances that you build with other surrounding districts to bounce ideas off. Have you met this challenge? What would you suggest we do? We've talked for years about the difficulty of attracting and retaining the very best teachers. We know there's a teacher shortage. To participate in a job fair alone, I think is of great importance to us. So while I really appreciate the concerns, and you've all had really good questions and comments, you're very thoughtful about this topic, I just want to encourage us to support our membership and most importantly, to support that strategic plan that we all voted and approved unanimously, because these are things that we value in our district. And this is just one way to try and make those things happen. Are there any other comments from my colleagues?
I have a comment. Can I just respond
Yes, sir.
to what you're saying? So is there more we can do? It's like, when I think about what you're saying, one person gets a workshop or a small group gets a workshop, they have to be able to point to resources that we can disseminate for next to nothing if it's not free in the libraries or on the internet, certain books or stuff that basically helps us to do the same things that they're doing over and above what we're doing just there with a $12,000 membership with limited programs that are passed on as best we can through maybe the PLC's program and other ways of getting out there. I just think a lot of this stuff, we have really a wonderful staff, a lot of smart people that, they're doing it every day, and look within inside of what's working already in our school districts and tap into the people who are doing. I'm not saying not doing it. I'm saying what else can we do besides this? That really is the one question that I didn't get to ask was, I think people would be concerned about the student programming and what that looks like. So if that's able to be opened up and looked at by certain, maybe there's a panel of people who are interested in looking at that. But just to be able to keep an eye on what's, because sometimes things that we think are going to help a certain group of students, the parents will not appreciate what we're doing to try to help. So being transparent about those programs are very important, because we time to time get complaints. And so just keeping an open dialogue. But I'm all for making the kids feel good, comfortable, welcomed, and loved, and valued, and all that great stuff. And a membership to the consortium is not going to fix that or make it better. It's a small, very small piece. So whatever else we're doing, I think there's a lot of resources out there that maybe they can even help. So we're a member. What else can you give us to pass on to everybody else that they could do maybe on their own time? And what are we doing that's working inside of our school district that we can pass on to each fellow colleague? Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you.
Mr. Salmon?
Yeah, real quick, I apologize. Networking from my prior experience in my prior career was 90% of what made a job work for you. Was having those phone calls available to your friends, the next county over, the next district over, whatever it was. That to me alone is worth membership, free. The world we're living in now, we wouldn't be discussing this if there wasn't issues around this country that triggers people to lose their minds. That's why we're here talking about a $12,000 membership. Otherwise, this would be already taken care of and sent on its way. What would you do if this is not approved? where do we go from there? Since it's obviously a very passionate conversation. And I don't even know if you've even thought about that, but, you know, there's things about this product that I think is fantastic, and the back of me says, there's the other person on the other side says, what if things come into light and into our classrooms that causes some of our parents and kids pain, along the lines of what's going on in other parts of the country. So $12,000 to me is nothing. We're ready to throw $30,000 out to do this and do, money's not an object, but what would you do if this was not approved by this board? I mean, where
I
would you
would
go?
pull the board together and
Arm wrestle?
I was thinking thumb wrestle,
Okay.
but have a heart-to-heart around who we are, who we want to be, open up that strategic plan that was approved by, you know, this same board, not a past board, and just engage in some real talk, because it's a need, and if this wouldn't be approved, then I would presume that something else like it, that to us would be inferior in some way, or else we would be bringing that instead of this, also would not be approved. So I think you really would have to just unpeel the layers of the onion and say, okay, folks, who are we? What do we believe? What do we want? What are we willing to commit to at that point? Honestly, I think we would just have to strip this thing down and just be really raw and authentic with each other, because you know the world is just crazy right now. We all know it. We're all living in it, and we're all struggling in it. No one more so than our kids. And there's, and Joe, to your question, which is a great question around, you know, how do we, whether it's quantitative or not, just, you know, how do we gauge success and measure and monitor success? The reality of this is we'll never be able to show causation, because you have this, you have the Living Strong piece, you have the SEL work that we talked about, we have KNS services, we have the 2 additional elementary counselors. So now you have, you know, students who are feeling all the things that we want them to feel, right? And they tell us, hey, I didn't feel this good, you know, last year or 3 years ago, now I do. Well, is it because of this, or this? And if we want to conduct an experiment, we'll, you know, do one at a time and isolate the variables, but that's not what we want to do. You know, I think it is the complementary approach, and I think it has to be measured, and it will be measured. But yeah, if not this, we need to say, hey, who are we?
And I'm going to add that I think a lot of what we do today and moving forward is about being transparent to our community, transparent to our staffs, and teaching them about what we're doing, and not assuming it's under an umbrella that it's not.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse than having to defend something that's not the truth.
Yep.
And we talked about truth and things like that earlier.
Yep.
But what concerns me, regardless of this membership moving forward, is that for the community and the audience, and you read social media, most of you folks here, you know, we've had kids in crisis this week, and I've worked with kids in crisis this week. I'm concerned about our kids. Toolboxes need to be loaded with tools, and you need to have the tools available to you. Does this answer all the things that might have some concerns? I probably have concerns about everything.
Yeah.
But our kids need to be educated. Our kids need to be cared for. And you know, for me, I don't know if this is the answer, but if you're going to sit there and tell me this is a part of the plan, then for me, that's worth a value somewhere. And this conversation can continue up until the board meeting, but I needed to hear that. And I think that's where we need to take a step back as a board and as a community. And remember, we're here for the kids. This is not about elections. This is not about anything else. This is about the children of Council Rock. And this week, I am concerned about our kids. So if this is an answer, this is a tool in your toolbox, I mean, I would get my PTO to donate the money to put this happen if we had to. It's not about the money.
No.
but it's about also educating the community to make sure it's not something that they think it may be.
Right.
And to me, that's the important thing. And that's why I ask a lot of questions, I get a lot of phone calls, and I want to have that answer that's consistent and truthful. To Mike's point, I'd love to see this product, because I voted for the product. I want to see what they did and where they are, and shortcomings that Denise spoke about during that meeting, that she'd like to see other eyes and fix some avenues that we haven't addressed. I do apologize. But I wanted to ask that question. I think it's a fair question, but I think it's our job as a school board and as an administration to educate our parents and our community stakeholders as much as the kids today in the world we're living in. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Well, I appreciate that question and your answer, really, really good. Because sometimes I think about this and I'm, our country's so divided right now. So I feel like a big community talk, open forum, as you said, get the board into a room and ask about who we are, where we're going, and who we want to be. That's something we have to do in public. So now I'm thinking that exercise is not going to be easy, may not even be productive. But at some point, that's something where I feel like invite experts in, let's have an open dialogue with everybody. I don't know how the format would work, but public comment, but we could spend a long time on what's going on, what's been going on since 2016. And this equity, diversity, and inclusion is right up that alley. How are we all going to mend and get back together? So your suggestion of whether or not we pass this or not, we have some things to take care of in the immediate, but sometime in the future, I'd love to see us get together and maybe bring all sides together and try to work out, and so everybody can understand, because I don't think, as you said, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there of what this is or what that is, and we're all learning, and so we're going to learn together. So I think that's a great thing I want to put out there. I'd organize it myself at some point, but right now I just want to say it's a good idea.
Dr. Thorwood.
I'd like to turn this around. It's not just out there, it's in here too. And I'd like to task the administrators in this room. I've heard lift everybody up, but then I get emails about how we've squished somebody down because of choices of books and classrooms and stuff. Can we get all our staff to, focus on, if I'm going to use this piece of material, does it lift everybody up or support our strategic plan, or doesn't it? And that's, very early on, this is not about privilege, but I can almost promise you we're going to get complaints about a privilege checklist in the school years, because it happens every year. So you see where I'm coming from? It's got to get pushed to the staff too, that our strategic plan is to lift everyone up, not skew it in any direction. And so I don't know if this does it or some other part, but this is part of it too. There's a line here that has to be thoughtful as we do it. So. And I don't need an answer tonight, and I don't know if it's part of this, but it's part of the overall, we keep quoting the strategic plan, and if it's to lift everyone up, then there can't be anybody left behind, or not lifted up because of our choice of material.
So I think I do have at least a partial answer. So one is, you can always message more, right? But this message has been delivered far and wide to our team CR. That said, we have 840 professional staff. Are you going to have one here, one there that make a bad choice, that stub their toe, that cross that line? It's the law of averages. We've seen it. We address it. We have yet, as far as I know, to have any repeat of that from any individuals. But the other piece is, I think we're seeing a lot less of that. And that goes back to the piece that Joe had asked about earlier about, around growth. And again, I fully acknowledged it earlier, and I'll own it as much as anyone, or should own it more than anyone. My own thinking has evolved since call it November 2016 or the middle of 2017 or probably even later. So some of the things that we work intentionally, not so wisely, I think, having trained to our folks, we had to, we had to shift gears. Yeah, and so, I think this whole thing is a process, and I think the process is actually going really well. And I think too, the one thing that I asked the board, and you won't be surprised that I would ask this, is that when we get a complaint, to let us see that investigation through. Because some complaints are spot on, and some complaints are missing the mark completely. And we've seen that. Y'all know, and I want everyone to know, I am a huge chain of command person. I think it's imperative in a school district or any organization of this size. But most importantly, in my experience, including here over the first month of this school year, when we have a parent who's upset about something within this realm, they're upset with something that the teacher did, and they go to the board, or they go to me, or they go to Dr. Elliott, or Dr. Sanko, or even the principal. Those folks weren't in the room, and those folks aren't, the ones who made the choice to do whatever was done. And so my experience here in CR over the first 4 weeks of this school year, as well as previously, is not every time, but the vast majority of times when that parent has a chance to engage and have a conversation with that teacher, there's, learning to take place probably on both ends. But we tend to walk away, both parties tend to walk away from that feeling a lot better than they did walking in. Because you have a parent who's pretty upset, you got a teacher who's probably pretty nervous, but if they just have a chance to hear each other and listen to each other and truly interact with each other, it's more times than not, it pays off. And in those instances where it doesn't, that's why the chain of command exists. So we elevate from there.
I just wanted to make a quick note based on what Mike just said. I feel like we have a lot more parents paying attention than back when we talked about the strategic plan and worked on, that was pre-COVID. And so is it possible to even just have a short presentation at our next meeting on what that is? It's just a nice way to let people know where they can read it, just informational for the parents and community members, that because we're talking about it right now, and this board obviously voted on it. And so I've heard from some people, hey, what about that plan? Are we doing things? And I know that COVID has unfortunately pushed us off, but is it possible maybe in the next meeting, the next public meeting coming up, to just cover it, let people know where the resources are? It's just an idea.
No,
but it also, I think it might be, I don't know, Mike, what your thoughts are, but.
I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
And it's not just students, and it's not the community. I include staff in that. And we can join a dozen consortiums, but if the staff isn't embracing it and thinking through what does this do for kids, then I have a problem. That's so, and that's, I want it to work, both ways.
And I think also, to a certain extent, based on what Ed even said, being focused on the kids, and I think being able to think about what is in our strategic plan based on our students and community right now. Obviously we did this before COVID, but, just trying to think about it in terms of now, as a way to maybe get centered and move forward so that we can continue with the plan, and think about all the ways that we can support you guys in trying to push that forward.
I think that's a great idea. To me, the plan is more relevant now than ever. I mean, it's almost prescient how these goals were developed. And some of the comment that we hear from our public just exhibits a great misunderstanding of what that plan is, how it was developed, the amount of community input that went into the plan. Some people seem to think, Dr. Frazier, that you sat down and wrote it, and that we all just said yes to it. So I think that would be helpful for our community to know how it was developed, why it was developed, and as I said, I think in understanding it better, they're going to see how relevant it is to our work right now. So I don't want to limit our conversation. I do want to open it to the public. I do want to take the opportunity to thank
Please.
all of you colleagues. That was a very thoughtful and to me a very helpful discussion. Any final remarks? If not, we'll go to public comment. And as we go around the room, I would ask you please if you would identify yourself and where you're from. I'm going to start on this side of the room. We'll go around.
I guess I sat in the right spot. Hi, my name is George Moriarty. I live in Upper Mayfield. I'm trying to project. I'm not sure where the microphone is. Two things that I'll try to address. First is in terms of a metric. It's not a metric, but it's an anecdote that I think is worthwhile for you guys to hear. Two anecdotes, actually. I was on the phone with somebody the other day, and he was in the car with his kid. And we were talking, my friend had encountered somebody who used a they them pronoun, had it on their work pad. He and I were talking about it. I'm the first to admit it. I goof that up all the time. His 11-year-old said, "Excuse me, Mr. Moriarty, here's why people who choose they them pronouns don't like to be asked about it." And this 11-year-old articulated it beautifully. I'm not even going to try to repeat it. It was great. That's a positive anecdote of how this is going on. Similarly, that's one for the folks on the left, right? There was a conversation about friends who had a differing opinion, and they sat down and talked about it and said, look at all the people crazy and yelling. We just got to talk. And that was it. And they did that at work. So I just thought, in terms of metrics, anecdotes aren't metrics. I get that from work. But I think it shows that these conversations are happening. Mr. Thorowitz points both ways. The thing I wanted to address before that is defining a diverse student. I was able to participate in the parent portion of the survey in the spring that we're waiting for the report on. I love that my section for that hour or so, we discussed equity and opportunity for our high learners and kind of addressing that chasm between what exists, particularly at the secondary school level, for those kids who are the high learners are so well prepared. I have 4 kids. I have a diverse learning set in my house. Addressing that chasm and bringing those kids who are not the naturally high learner up was a massive effort of that, and I'm looking forward to that report. And I think in defining the diverse student, that was something that wasn't said, but it's certainly a focus of the folks I was talking to at DVCEE, is to address all learners too, not just whatever the cultural background may be as well. So I hope that's correct, and I look forward to the report that they focus on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Gassner. So when I see what's on the screen, I agree with everything there. As a former educator, I have taken diverse professional development classes, and I found it extremely beneficial when I was in the classroom with my students, because I knew how it impacted my own biases working with kids, and when the kids come through the door and they're in my classroom, I know they have different experiences, and it doesn't matter what color we are, if first generation born in the States, first, coming in with different languages. I get all of this, but my biggest concern is the curriculum and what our kids are being exposed to. And let's leave the labels out. Let's leave the CRT, let's leave the DEI away from it, because it's not about that. It's about bringing in a teacher selecting a book when it's on the unapproved list, and they still bring it into the classroom. Everything that comes into the classroom is a teachable moment. We, as educators, we need to decide how we're going to take that moment and discuss it in the classroom. And sometimes the questions that come out of that discussion are not whether you like it or you don't like it. It goes into more. We don't know what the kids are thinking, they're asking the questions. And as an educator, you want to answer those questions, but at the same time, you want to stop it. And that's what my concern is, and,
So,
and,
I'm sorry, Ms. Kessler, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to ask that we try to keep our focus on our agenda items for tonight.
Okay, sorry.
That's quite all right. You have a legitimate question and concern. I know that you've been in communication with the board. I would ask you to follow up with us, or if you have a specific curriculum questions, perhaps Dr. Elliott could speak with you about that.
Okay.
Just in terms of trying to address, I think, what your issue is tonight.
So what I saw here, just to make it quick, what I saw here tonight, I'm in agreement with it. My biggest concern is what the curriculums would look like from that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to me.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Nadine Johns. I am just here. I don't have social media. It's a beautiful thing. That'll never, ever, ever, ever happen. So,
I am so jealous.
It's
I'm sorry,
ignorance
Ms.
is
Jones,
bliss.
could you identify where you are?
I'm in Holland, Langhorne, Quartermass Road. So the only reason that I'm here is because I don't have social media, which again is a beautiful thing. It's kind of whisper down the lane as to what is entailed with a lot of these programs, and this is a very heated thing that comes up. And I know you can't quantify, you can't measure things, but I think it would benefit parents, especially parents who aren't as connected as I am, if we could get into the specifics, if there could be just transparency, if there were links, and I apologize if this was discussed when I was in the restroom, that there would be an outline of the program to, answer any question, that things are spelled out so that it would quell any kind of, inflammatory responses that some parents might have. I'm just looking for specifics. That's it, and just transparency. And I'm not really connected. The world needs a hub right now, that's for sure, with this program. And I'm for anything like that. I'm just looking for, what is this? What's going to be taught? I'm not socially connected, so I'm just kind of going by what I hear. And sometimes that's not, the best judge. So my thoughts are, I would just like some kind of outline or some kind of link to the program and the criteria or the curriculum or whatever is going to be spelled out for it. That's why I'm here. I'm just blind and I'm just looking for direction. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Jennifer Brady. I'm from Churchville. I really just came to see what the presentation was about because my daughter was in a classroom where I was just that was inappropriate. She's in 7th grade at Holland, and she had a bad experience. She sent me a text message from school. I'm sure you all got my horribly emotional email 2 Friday nights ago. And I still don't feel like there's resolution. It was basically, I know it's a specific incident, but
Yeah,
I want transparency. I want to know what the program is. I want to know what the teachers are bringing into the classroom. My kids are open. I know what's going on in their classrooms. But I want it to be addressed too when there's an issue.
Right, and I
She
know
didn't feel, warm and safe that day.
And I know that we've heard from you, and I know that there's follow-up that will occur with that to address.
I'm looking forward to follow-up.
Right, thank you.
I'm just
Thank you. Would you care to
I'm
speak?
going to stand up for a second. So, not going to talk long, even though I feel like I can talk about this topic forever. Most of you know me. My name is William Holmes. I'm a parent of 4 children in the district, 4 different schools actually. Yeah, they call me the whole bus program. But I live in Richboro, and like I said, 4 different schools, so I'm going to go through the whole list. But I just want to touch on a couple things. And so I'm actually happy that the thing about metrics came up today. Because as much as I'm happy that we're doing the program and that we want to do the training, I think it's very important to see what's the progress. And the third word I wanted to say, where's the report? I also am like, where's the report? Just because I'm interested in what's going to come out of it. That's one thing. The second thing is that I find that people are missing the main importance of this whole thing. It's not about or, I'm just gonna say, it's about education, awareness, and understanding. I get a little disappointed, and I'm not attacking anybody in this room, just telling you how I feel about it, but I get a little disappointed when I hear people talk about the complaints, the concerns. Nobody talks about the complaints and the concerns from the minority of people that are mostly impacted by this whole thing. Everybody's talking about the complaints and the concerns of the majority of people. And I get it, I understand. I too want transparency because I want to know what's going on, what's being talked about. But I've never heard somebody complain about a diversity-related program and say, hey, I didn't like how my kid felt, but by the way, I also am concerned about how, maybe the black kid in the classroom felt at that time too. Nobody ever says that. I've also heard people say things like, we don't have a problem in this district. Correct. The majority of the people don't have a problem in this district. But the diverse groups in the district, I guarantee you talk to many of us, and yeah, we have some concerns and some complaints. So allow our voices to be heard too. So the same way that you get complaints from numbers of people, hear the other side of the complaints as well too. Because there's two sides of every story. I don't know about the books that have been, complaints about specific books, but I guarantee you, I've made complaints about homework assignments and books that have been shared with my kids. Things that have been asked for my kids to do. That it's like, whoa, this is totally offensive to my family that you ask my child to do this assignment or to read this book. Nobody's talking about that, and that's been going on for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So, again, I get a little disappointed when it's like, it's all about me, and how I feel, and nobody's caring about how the, not minority from ethnicity, but just the minority of groups of people feel. So I appreciate a lot of the board's comments tonight. I was actually very pleased with the discussion. To be honest with you, I didn't anticipate the great discussion that happened. So I was actually very pleased with it. So I'm very proud to hear the discussion that happened and the comments that were made. But I just want to kind of make those comments that, just hear the diverse voices. And I don't, the only thing, Mr. Dahl, but the only thing I didn't agree with was the comparison to other school districts. And only reason being because you can't compare us to Philadelphia School District. Now, in some cases, yes, you're talking about diversity from different aspects and things like that, but to say, how are they using this when they are diverse, I think it's a wrong comparison, in terms of kind of saying, why aren't the diverse school district using the diversity program? The non-diverse school district is the one that really needs the diversity program, because again, it's about education and awareness. And when I hear, again, I've been in the district for over 15 years, and it's every February, it's like, does anything happen for Black History Month? Every Hispanic Heritage Month, does anything happen? Even Women's Month, what's going on? I have seen changes recently. So that's my way of kind of seeing the progress. Just that, oh great, there's a morning announcement talking about Heritage Month. Great. It's not across all schools yet, it's not consistent, but I have seen progress. I'd like to see faster progress. I'd like to see, just doing things the right way, and again, having transparency for everybody. But again, I'm going to stop talking because I could go on about this forever. And by the way, I full transparency, I work in the diversity field, so I have conversations with people all the time, and I get it from both sides, right? So I understand the concerns on both sides. I'm a pretty fair guy. Sometimes it's a fault, but I try to get it from both sides, understand it from both sides. But again, I want the diverse voices to be heard.
Right, thank you.
I feel your pain on this, Steve.
Since you're opposite, I was only trying to say why they weren't. I would not compare ourselves.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Why they don't? Why doesn't the university focus on other groups? Because there's maybe it's a reverse situation.
Right, which is
Yeah.
in consideration too, right? And just remind me of one thing, one last thing I want to say, just to totally just debunk this whole thing. And I know it's been said tonight, but I just want to emphasize there are two different things going on here. And when you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, again, education, awareness, understanding, it's so important. I think you said, Peter said it, but I always kind of like to make the comment of Council Rock does a great job of producing excelling, excellent students. But you need to prepare these students to be leaders. And somebody said it earlier, but when they go outside of Council Rock, the world looks very different. The demographics are changing. If they want international assignments, they have to be aware of different cultures and aware of different ways of thinking and just different aspects of life and people. And if you're around the same people all the time, you don't get that awareness unless there is an intentional focus put on it. A program like this is the beginning to me, but there has to be an intentional focus to prepare these students for the future. And it's not critical race theory, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would love to sit down and talk to anybody that feels like, oh, this is going to be an attack on us. Again, it's like, this is about raising up the kids that are not getting the attention and having their voice be heard. So.
Sure, just one last thing I'll say is that my wife, when we were at Marina Welsh, and she was part of the PTO, she started the heritage picnic, where people could bring their ethnic foods there, and I thought it could bring that up to the whole school district,
Awesome. We did something like that. We had a diversity committee at Newtown Elementary.
Yes.
And we did similar thing. We had like a heritage day, food, dancers, everything. Awesome.
Sorry.
Thank
Sorry.
you so much.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to try and get to everybody
Sure.
as we are getting past 9 o'clock now. Was there a comment? No. Thank you.
He's hourly, you wait.
Give him an opportunity.
Come on,
Speak.
come on, speak up.
Okay. Public comment?
Sure. I'll just second basically everything that gentleman said. It was awesome. I just want to add.
I'm sorry, would you please just identify and where you're from?
Sure. My name is Ian Musselman. I'll just second that everything that gentleman said. I'll just add that I know I heard it dropped a couple times. Critical race theory is a graduate level discipline that is not taught in any way at any K-12 education system. Please don't fall into the trap of using it as a form of intimidation to keep things being taught. This seems like an excellent program. And like I said, everything that gentleman said, I'm sorry I didn't get the name, was far better than I
Thanks, Mr. Musselman.
Hi, my name is Gail Evans, and I live in Holland. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this is going to sound very critical of the school district. But I think it's really important that we understand why it is we need to have organizations like Delaware Valley Consortium as a part of training Council Rock. And so my family's been a part of this community for more than 100 years. We have 6 generations. 5 of those generations have graduated from Council Rock. And the 6th generation is my 5-year-old grandson, who is at Rolling Hills Elementary as a kindergarten official. And I'm going to tell you that I'm concerned, and that I'm frustrated, and I'm disappointed. I'm concerned because I believe this is the beginning of a broader effort by uninformed voices to silence informed voices and erase the tumultuous yet resilient history of Black, Indigenous people of color from public educational materials, textbooks, and resources. Further disenfranchising those students who have felt the sting of prejudice, racism, discrimination, and bigotry in the Council Rock school community. Sadly, but not surprisingly, every generation has been the target of ignorance and implicit bias in this district. None more impacted than my daughter Avery, who is a 2021 graduate of Council Rock South. She made the difficult decision to spend her senior year as a virtual student, not only because of the pandemic, but because she was racially profiled and traumatized by a security officer at Council Rock South High School. We spent thousands of dollars on therapy for her as a result of that. She no longer felt safe emotionally, and she did not feel physically protected while she was at school. The year before, she somehow managed to persevere despite the embarrassment and humiliation she felt while reading Huckleberry Finn and the supplementary material advocating the use of the N-word. In fact, I find it hypocritical that parents can argue against the works of Ta-Nehisi Coates, but be in favor of books and films, such as To Kill a Mockingbird, where each and every one of my 6 daughters have been pulled from their classrooms by their teachers in case the materials that were going to be presented were going to be offensive to them.
And I apologize for interrupting, and I appreciate your emotion around this issue. Very legitimate. I would just ask if we could try to focus your comments on our agenda item for tonight, rather than a curriculum. I would be most happy to communicate with you about those issues.
This is a part of this, and this is what is problematic. And I agree with Will. I also work in the diversity field. This is the umbrella. So if you're not going to have organizations come in like this and have conversations about why we need this, this is the result. Children are the results of not having these conversations. And so if we're not going to listen to why parents of color are frustrated and why they're disappointed and why they're angry, then there's no point in having these conversations.
And in no way did I mean to disrespect or give you that impression. I think for myself personally, I just wanted to be clear about comment and response that we're getting as relates to these specific topics that we'll be voting on next week, but fully appreciate your concern and your fervor about curriculum items or issues in which you feel that your family has not been treated equitably and fairly. So by no means do I mean to dismiss that or disrespect your feelings about that. I would just ask if we could perhaps focus it specifically on our agenda item for tonight, if that's possible.
So specifically on this agenda item, let me tell you, I'm taking a bit of offense to that.
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear you.
I'm taking a bit of offense to that as a parent. Because what I'm seeing is that we're focused on this later. We've heard voices all over the district argue for the majority. And I doubt the majority of any kid has been pulled out of classroom because the content may be offensive. And when there is the opportunity to have a conversation, this is what happens. Because we want to look at it from here, and we don't want to look at it from here. And so we have to look at the whole structure, from top to bottom. I'm done.
Again, I apologize if I gave offense. That was certainly not my intention. So thank you for commenting tonight. Public comment? No.
Yeah, good evening, Hope on Sound. I wasn't planning to say anything, but I guess we're round robin, so I feel just a quick comment that, I watched this presentation and there were a lot of things that hit home for me personally because I am an immigrant. English was my second language. I was the first in college on half of my family, and I feel like this is kind of a no-brainer. It's, as Mr. Adami said, it's a tool. It's not a curriculum. It's just one element of moving and looking forward in a district that my husband and I moved 17 years ago, and as an educator, I taught in Philadelphia for 8 years while I lived here. And the reason I chose Council Rock specifically is because of everything that it brings. So I really look forward to that the board would approve a very, to me, a basic and kind of standard. I don't think it's anything that is threatening, and again, it moves us forward into the 21st century. Both my husband and I have careers and we travel, and I think moving and having students that graduate from Council Rock, it's important to prepare them for the 21st century and the global workforce, regardless of whether it's trade or they go on the military force or whatever they choose to do in life, that it's becoming more and more interdependent in a global situation. And I think this is something that eats that. So I thank you.
Ms. McKee? Can I ask a question?
I don't know if I'd be able to answer it, but.
That's okay. I just wanted, in listening to Mr. Mullen and Ms. Evans, right? My kids, we're a very diverse family, very diverse family. I'm a first generation born here. I grew up with my father speaking Polish, and people say my that father talked funny. My husband's half Korean. So I get the diversity part, and I just want to let you know that my children hang out with a lot of different, like, different types of students, diverse students. And in speaking with one student that's no longer here, and she was a black student. She was in a situation where the teacher did not discipline the student when they spoke out of line with her friend. And I'm just wondering, my question is, what kind of training is it happening with the teachers on how to handle when there are, when there are, I can't find the word for it, but when there are like disagreements with different diversity students, what kind of training are the teachers going to go through in handling those disciplinary actions? So the student feels that this teacher is taking control of that situation and being able to support both students. You know what I mean? Like, and not just letting it go. Because the student felt like the teacher just let it go instead of handling the situation at hand. So my concern is what type of training, because it could be uncomfortable dealing with if there's a conflict between students, what kind of training is going to happen.
And I don't know that I have a specific answer to that. I think we touched on some of the programs that are offered to our staff. I don't know if anyone else wishes to respond to that, or if we have a more fully developed answer. I don't know.
I can speak to it a little bit. So some of the programs that we currently have in place, so at the elementary level, we use responsive classroom, which the focus of responsive classroom is building community and also teaching students how to engage with each other. At the secondary level, we have restorative practices, which is also geared to helping engage students in conversations with each other in an appropriate manner, being respectful. It's something that, as a district, we continue to work on. Those two programs are something that are part of our induction program. So all of our new hires receive training in, depending on whether they're elementary or secondary, responsive classroom or restorative practices. But again, it's something that, we're always working to get better and always looking for ways that, we can continue to help teachers and students and support those sometimes challenging conversations that happen between students or in classrooms or in the hallways or different contexts. One of the other things that we've done as a district administratively, and Dr. Fraser had mentioned earlier this evening that in addition to DVCEE, we've also been working with an organization called Living Strong. And our first work with Living Strong was some administrative training where we worked as district leaders, our principals and our curriculum leaders and central office administration worked with the Living Strong consultants on really understanding how to begin to build teams within their buildings to support that development of engaging in some of those more challenging conversations, not only that might happen with students, but also how a teacher might, think about how you engage in that conversation with a student or with a parent, in different contexts. So that's something that, it sounds like a broken record, but we keep saying that the pandemic has interrupted some of what we've been doing.
Right.
So some of that work was really well underway before the pandemic forced us to kind of close things down and take a turn to focus on that. But it's something that, our buildings have been working on with their building teams, and how do we continue to further that work. One of the advantages of our work with Living Strong was in addition to the training that they provided our administrators in like a workshop format. The second part of that training was visiting the buildings and serving as coaches within the building. So really digging in with the building principals and, okay, what are the specific things for your building and your team of folks? And how can we take what we learned together as a group and apply that in your setting and where you are with your folks right now? And some of that work continues.
That sounds great. And that is part of this program that from UPenn, is that?
So Living Strong is a different group that we've worked with and not with UPenn.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm looking around the table. Are there any closing comments from board colleagues or administrators? Hearing none, I'd like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.